Gary Erickson, I guess I can introduce you now officially, is the managing partner of Executive Search Partners. Known Gary, gosh, long, many moon, 20 years at least. His search partners and him and he are, you're pretty big now. You just added a couple of new folks, didn't you?
Yes, we did. We added Paul Peabody, had been the CIO of several hospital chains, including Beaumont. Was one of the youngest, was the first youngest CIO in the state of Michigan, and I was the second youngest. He was 29, I was 34.
Wow, that's probably only like 5 years ago or so, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, the show, doesn't it? Yeah, it's the kind of job that ages you.
The video puts age on you. I know you're much younger than that. So anyway, So what we're going to talk about is, since he's in the job search business, let's start off with, I've prepared questions here. So what should you do to prepare for a job search, Gary?
Well, if you go through a regular job search, and there are probably a few more people these days because the economy is sort of a little shaky, and I'm hearing about some layoffs. I'm also hearing about hiring. So the economy is sort of a mixed bag right now. But if you're looking for a new position, whether you've lost your job or you want to find a brand new job, you need to get prepared for the search. And one of the ways to get prepared for the search that we recommend is that you develop a series of success stories. These are questions whenever you're in an interview, if somebody asks you a question, have you ever done anything like this? Give me an example of that. What's your best project you've ever worked on, or something like that? What's the biggest problem you ever had? Provide an answer that says, here, let me give you an example of what I did, and then launch into a success story. We don't want to make those up on the spot. Being prepared for these interviews is writing down, go over the last 10 years of your career, write down 5 to 10 success stories a year in a format that a lot of people are familiar with: STAR, PAR, CAR, SAR. The format is, what is the problem you were working on? What were the actions you took or led? And what measurable results did you get? And write those down, and then see if you can condense each of those into 2 sentences. You can use this in answering questions in an interview, and you can use that for accomplishments that you put on your resume.
Okay, so what in your mind is the ideal resume? What would be the goal you're striving toward, perfection?
All right. Well, let me share my screen here.
Yep, it's all set to go.
All right. Let's see. Let me find the right one. There we go. This one. Share. Okay. The ideal resume looks something like this. You've got, I don't know if there we go. We got a professional summary at the top, fairly short. That's very specific. I didn't highlight that, but for example, the budget size, the titles you've held, managed, how many numbers of teams of people, and budgets of 35 million. These are kind of things that help people decide whether you've had the sort of scope of experience they're looking for. And then new to executive search partners, and we're using this regularly, is we want every resume to be customized to the position. And we like to have near the top something that says why you're a particular fit. We guarantee, absolutely 100% guarantee, that if you insert this qualifications for position of whatever in your resume, list 4 or 5 dot points here about why you're a good fit for the position, you will get an interview. Now, don't apply. So this is sort of a little weasel way out of this. Don't apply for jobs you're not qualified for. By thinking your way through this part of the title, you figure out whether you actually are a fit for the position. We have a lot of people apply for jobs who say, I can do the job. And then I said, yes, you might be able to do the job, but what are your qualifications for it? They can't enumerate them. Here's where you enumerate them and think about, let's say you want to be a CIO. Why should you be a CIO? You want to have background. I've led IT organizations of a certain size. You want to have results that you can demonstrate that show that you've improved the business, that you've reduced costs, that you've got an IT organization that works well. Those are the kind of qualifications that the audience for this resume is looking for. And that's typically the president of the company, the CIO, if you're looking for, say, a CIO position. The next thing we recommend on a resume is, on a professional history, Most people will put the name of the company, ABC company, but they won't describe the company. Now, a lot of people have heard of Ford and General Motors, but when you get, let's take Kelsey Hayes or even Lear Corporation. How many people really know how big Lear Corporation is and what kind of business they're in? Put that information down there. The next thing we want is title, and then
or Gary, like the fellow we just had on, Hitachi Astemo. I guarantee you, not one person in 100 would know what they do. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's an important
point. Actually, I think not a lot of people actually know the scope and size of a Ford Motor Company. As an example, they know what they do, but they don't really know what they do. If you get anyway.
Yeah.
The next thing we want is under Chief Information Officer, under the title, put your title down and then describe your responsibilities in this section here very concisely. And then put down 3-4 significant accomplishments using those success stories I talked about before. And if the success stories are no more than 2 sentences each, they fit in here really well. So this is the general format that we recommend for resumes. Make sure that you have it summarize why you're a fit for the position, and then make sure you describe the company, your responsibilities, and then some accomplishments that are related. And you only need 3 or 4. I see people putting 20 and 30 accomplishments here, and that doesn't help you. It's too hard for people to read, too hard for people to get a feel for who you are.
And I assume you want to keep it to what, 2 pages or so, maybe 3, not like 10 or something like that.
No, you don't want it to be. You don't want it to be 10. 2 pages is okay. I usually like 3 to 3.5. You want it at the end of your resume, and I want to have it here on this one. Down here, add this section called recognitions, awards, and other, because what are your community activities? What have you been recognized for? Have you had any speaking engagements? Add those kind of things down at the bottom of your resume. Sort of enhances who you are, and you're more of a whole person to the person reading it.
So what are 3 ways to find a job, Gary?
I would like to, am I back on the screen now?
You have to turn off the share.
I have one. I have one follow-up question about the resume, though, Gary.
Okay,
before we get
away.
into that, I have heard that it's a good idea not to go too far back into your career if you are, shall we say, seasoned, and don't put the dates of your degree on it either, because that would be another giveaway. What's your thoughts on that?
It's really funny how counterintuitive going to be on this. If you don't put those things in your resume, people are going to assume you're old and you're not ready for it. So it always comes out. And it's especially at a senior level position, you've got to be able to show people your entire career. They'd like to know how you grew up. You can't hide the fact that you graduated from college like me in 1967.
I think Matt graduated from Western in 55, wasn't it, Matt? So
that would be my dad, but okay.
All right.
Getting back to
I mean, eventually you're going to get an interview, and you can't hide the fact that that. So you just can't. So
let me digress for a moment about age in positions. We're seeing that age discrimination. Certain people who say, "Well, he's too friggin' old for a job," right? But look at the 3 of us. I'm much older than you guys, but we're still working actively. What people are looking for in somebody who's a leader in the organization is, do they have intelligence? Are they quick? Are they active? Do they look like they've got energy? Imagine walking into a resume sort of like this, right? Versus confident and energetic. It's a big difference. Age does matter at some point to some people, but it's really more about how you appear to people.
Well, in this day and age, I mean, with the job skill shortage, I mean, there's lots of jobs available, but there aren't a lot of people with those skills to fill those jobs. So I think that's kind of overriding whether you're 35 or 55, right?
Yep. And we don't ask people's age on that, but it's a dead giveaway that they're concerned about their age when you don't see their years of graduation and they stopped their career 10 years ago and it starts with a vice president or something. People don't come right out of college and do a vice president position unless they start their own company.
Sure.
That's it.
Right.
Yes.
So let's get back to Mike's question of a moment ago. You say that there are 3 ways to find a job. So let us know what those are, please.
Well, there's three ways you find a job. There's recruiters, there's online job postings, and there's networking. And the number one way to find a job is networking. And there's 2 key requirements in networking. One, don't be afraid to contact people and say, hey, I'm looking for another job. I'd like to get your advice. See if you can schedule a 15, 20, 30-minute call with them so they learn your background. And what you want to get out of that interview or discussion or whatever with the person, you want to get 3 things. You want to get the names of some other people you might be able to network with, maybe some recruiters that could be helpful in the field, and maybe some companies you may want to target for that search. So that's the first thing about networking. The second thing is you're starting to contact all these people. If you do it on a regular basis, you'll accumulate a lot of people you've contacted. Everybody there in that group you've talked to has been helpful to you. You need to acknowledge that help by getting back to them first with a thank you, and then on a regular basis with a short email to tell them how you've been doing in your job search. Because anybody who's helped you has some interest in how you're doing. And if you don't respond to them, they either think you've got a new job or you're not very grateful for the help they gave you.
Mm.
Right.
The other thing that happens when you network with somebody or get back to them is they keep you at top of mind. So in case they run across something, a month from now, 6 weeks from now, whatever, they'll think of you rather than forgetting about you. So that's my number one. The networking is number one. Number 2 are recruiters. Get a list of recruiters, contact the recruiters, let them see who you are. If they got a position, give them a resume that's customized to the position like the one I showed earlier. And job postings. The thing about job postings is people who post jobs get so many resumes that the only people they really look at are people that look like they're an exact fit to the position. And that section that I had in there, which we call the in-resume cover letter, so qualifications for a position of whatever it was, if you put that section in there, anybody reading your resume is going to read that section immediately. And if they think you're a fit from those items, there's a good chance you're going to get a call for that position. So 3 ways you get a job. You get it through networking, which is the number 1 way to get it, 2 through online job postings, and 3 through recruiters.
Matt?
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, and that really is true. I found that in my career, the follow-up with people you're networking with. I had one particular job search experience where that certainly applied to me, and it was very important. So if you apply for a job online, how can you guarantee it that you'll at least be considered? Because online seems to be a shot in the dark.
Well, I've mentioned a couple of things related to that. Let me be very focused on that. A lot of people say when you apply online, you got to apply with a resume that has a bunch of keywords in it so the bots don't kick you out. And that may be true at very lower level jobs, but I will say this without any fear of being contradicted. I don't know of any company that I've ever worked with that uses bots to screen candidates. It's always a human being. And your resume, so if you're applying for a job online, first off, only apply for jobs for which you're qualified. And that means read the qualifications, think about why you're qualified. Use that section I talked about, qualifications for position. Write down 5 reasons why you're fit for the position, compare it to their requirements, and think about the person who's reading it. If they read this about me, will they think I'm qualified for the position? So only apply for jobs that you're qualified for, and make sure your resume is customized with that section that for the particular position you're talking about or applying for.
If it comes down to the interview, Gary, what is the best way to answer interview questions?
Well, remember early on, we talked about getting prepared for an interview with the, I call them PARs, the success stories. Anytime anybody asks you, oh, let me tell you Gary Erickson's 2 pithy rules for interview. Rule number 1, the more the other person talks, the better you look. Number 2, all right, that is the rule number 2 is remember the interview is not about you. Now everybody says, well, what do you mean it's not about me? Of course it's about me. But during the first 20 to 25 minutes of any interview, the interviewer is the one that is in charge of the interviews. And it's their agenda and their questions. And to the extent that you talk a lot in answering their questions, the less they'll get through the questions and the more bored they'll be. So keep your answers short and focused during that first 20 minutes. If they want more information, they will ask you follow-up questions during that particular interview process. So answer any question with your PARs, keep your answers short. And then the final advice that we give people is at the end of the interview, they're going to say, do you have any questions? And you might have some about the job and the position and the company that you want to ask them. But what we suggest you ask 2 questions. The first one is, tell me about the top 4 or 5 things you want this person to get done in the next year. And that allows you to remind them, well, yeah, I've done the number 1, number 3, and number 5. We didn't talk about number 2. Let me give you a success story that talks about number 2. Let me give you a success story that talks about number 5. So you reinforce that you're the kind of person that can do all the things they're looking for. Excuse me. And then the final question, and this is key. This is, you really want to know how you did in the interview. You want to know if there are any places where they think you're not sufficient or you've got gaps in your background and you're not qualified. But you can't ask them that directly. You can say, how does my background and experience fit the requirements of the position? So you're not asking, how did you feel about me? You're not asking about you're not asking about, am I a good person? You're saying, how do my background and experience fit the requirements of the position? And a good interviewer will say, well, I think you're really good here and here, but I'm not so sure I don't know if you've got the experience for this. That gives you a chance to answer that objection. And if you can, answer it with a success story.
Is that what you suggest then for closing out an interview to sort of maximize your chances, that strategy?
Yes. Yeah. That those 2 questions at the end, the answering, keeping your answer short and focused, using your success stories, and then at the end of the interview, closing it out with those 2 key questions, which basically reinforces why you're a good fit for the position.
Well, let's talk finally about, the number 2 reason we do all this. One is for personal satisfaction and all that. The other is for money. So let's talk about money for a second. One of the tricky questions to answer is, how much will it take to get you to accept our offer? How do you think you should answer that question?
That's really tricky. First off, let's go to what legal requirements are. First legal requirement is the person who you're talking with cannot ask you how much you're making. They used to be, we always did that as recruiters. How much you're making now? We want to make sure we get you an increase. But what happened is because of some of the discrimination where certain minority groups or gender groups were paid less than white males, for example. And so now the only thing you can ask is, what are you looking for in this position? You need to be able, you can't waffle with something, well, I'll just take what the job is worth, I'm sure you'll pay me fairly kind of thing. Have a really good idea of what that position's worth and what you think you would want to get it. And if you're out there looking for a job, if you're making $145,000 a year and this is an upgrade in a job, maybe you should be asking for 160 to 170. Don't ask for 200. Be realistic. Find out what the market is, but make sure you ask for a fair pay.
Is there any way to look at a benchmark for that very thing? For instance, the company is X this size, and typically they pay their senior executives this much, and anything like that?
The higher you up you get, the more variable it becomes. in the position. You can ask the people who are in the marketplace like ourselves. I can give you a pretty good salary range for a whole bunch of jobs off the top of my head because we've been doing this for a long time. Salary surveys are frequently inaccurate. If you go to something like Green Doors or Glassdoor, they'll tell you what the salary ranges are per particular jobs, and I usually find those are way undervalued. ZipRecruiter is a good one. You know, the cost accounting manager position, as a recent example, where the company was willing to pay $130,000 a year. The average price in that area for a cost accounting manager was $85,000.
Wow.
Well, that's because it included an average across a whole range of size of companies and scope of response. Okay. You can do your research. You can find out what they are. You can look at online job postings to see what other people are paying for the job. You can look at where you've been paid. You can look at the size and scope of the position and come up with a pretty reasonable guess based upon that.
And I know there are also professional organizations and trade associations that do salary surveys as well. And those, I think, probably tend to be a little bit more accurate. I know in journalism, Editor and Publisher magazine, or as I used to call it, Publisher and Publisher. Mike will get that joke. Yep. But because it's all about management. But anyway, they used to do, they used to publish salary information for journalism. I'm sure there's organizations and publications, trade publications like that in other fields too.
Yeah. And you can, if you want to do a little research, you can call your friends and say, what do you think, it's hard to say how much are you making, but you can say, hey, I'm looking at a job at director level of IT or a CIO position for this size company. What do you think the range of salary ought to be for that?
What do you think would be fair for that job? Right. Yeah. And they'll probably give you a ballpark. So, because I know when I've helped Lawrence Tech hire, I've done a little bit of that research, and it's been interesting. So
Gary, I know you have a great website that has lots of tools available for job seekers. Why don't you talk a little bit about that before we close?
Well, on everything I just mentioned here, in terms of how to write your resume, how to prepare for resume writing, how to network, how to answer key questions. There's on our website, there's a document called 12 Steps for a Highly Successful Job Search and a sample resume and some sample questions and some sample answers that you can download. Those are really good to help you. The key, let me go back to the key is being prepared. The key is knowing yourself. The key is knowing how to answer those questions when you get to an interview, because the interview is everything.